van zijn grootste angsten.
Cathy? You hurry up, please! Hurry up! Cathy! Get away from her now!
Okay, roll camera. Rolling. Okay, that guy's looking up. Here comes the trailer. Oh my God, and duck your heads from the trailer. And cut. Very nice. Good day, everybody.
Since he hit the road with Jewel 25 years ago, Steven Spielberg has made movies non-stop. But after Schindler's List, he took a 3-year break to form a new company and bring up a family. Now he's returned with a vengeance, with The Lost World. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the park, there's another one.
Thank God for Side B.
Side B?
We bred the animals there and nurtured them for a few months and then moved them into the park. Life will find a way, as you once so eloquently put it. And by now we have a complete ecological system on the island without fences, without boundaries, and for 4 years I've tried to keep it safe from human interference.
Well, that's right. I mean, hopefully we've kept this island quarantined and contained, but I'm in shock about all this.
I've organized an expedition.
What do you mean, like with people?
Strictly observation and documentation. 4 members only.
4? People? John, you'd need, like, the National Guard.
No. The carnivores are isolated in the interior of the island so the team can stay on the outer rim. Don't worry, Ian. I'm not making the same mistakes again.
No, you're making all new ones.
Because it's a sequel, you have to be patient and learn what the story reasons are to justify the existence of the sequel. And I think that's just one of the, it's one of the bitter pills that any sequel maker has to swallow. There's so much more setup time than there is in a normal original story. I think we certainly cut to the chase quicker in The Lost World because we have dinosaurs very nearly on the opening of the curtain. But then we still have that sort of fairly long stretch where you have to get to know new characters and understand what the new story is about and figure out what the new rules of the game are, and then we embark on the journey. And then from that point on to the end, it's a flat-out, full-speed adventure.
When you started making this film, you hadn't called action for 3 years. Were you a bit rusty?
I was the first couple of days. I think I was awfully rusty, but it is a bit like getting back on a bicycle. You pick it up pretty quickly, and then the ambrosia takes over, and you kick yourself for not having worked for 3 years.
You've reached a position of eminence in your profession, and people would defer to you by and large, but whom do you still look to for advice to say, Stephen, you're wrong on this? Who can tell you what to do?
I have always, all through my career, had people in my life. No matter the people who work with me the closest, the people who aren't afraid of me, who aren't intimidated by me, or whatever, my name stands for. They know that the name is one thing and who I am is something totally different. And so I've always found myself with people who are honest and direct with me and not afraid to say this stinks or this isn't any good or I sure wouldn't want my kids to see that. And I've chosen people to work in my life, on my films, who aren't afraid to be honest with me.
Well, who are these people? Can you name it?
Well, from my cameraman to my film editor to the head of my company, Walter Parks, to my partners, David Geffen and Jeffrey Katzenberg, to my wife, first and foremost, Kate. I mean, I'm surrounded by, my best critics. If she wanders this way. Now I just want to stay on Ian doing his whole thing, calling, on the frequencies. And then you get really scared.
Janusz Kaminski, director of photography. He won an Oscar for Schindler's List.
Towards the window. Now come towards me now. Look at that.
That's nice.
That's gorgeous.
Okay. Why don't we just do it without the creature? Just tie the creature in.
And there, the creature will be right here. Then I tie the creature.
Not tie
exactly.
the creature in. So let's. How do we do that? Do we want to
Stan Winston, in charge of visual effects.
Well, if we don't set it, this baby's going to die. And the kid's gonna
Julianne Moore plays a paleontologist.
He won't be able to run or even walk. A predator will pick him off before he's a couple weeks old.
Turn. Look at that. Roar! Roar again. I pretty much went into this like a big boy with both of my eyes open. Very hard to top yourself with any sequel, and I pretty much knew that going in. What you will never have when you make a second Indiana Jones or even a second and third Star Wars is the debut of something no one has ever seen the likes of before. So you have to immediately, when you make a sequel, take out one of the greatest reasons that people came to see the movie initially, was that it was about something and they heard it contained effects and ideas that they had never seen in any other film previous to that moment. And because of that, when you make a sequel, already the audience knows about the magic. And now they're pretty much saying, okay, now what do you have to show off? And you need a story to draw them for the second time around.
Not an ancient religious ceremony, but a modern movie technique. In order to see how the Tyrannosaurus Rex will look when it's later generated by computer, the dinosaur has a cardboard stand-in.
Start down there as you change the guy up. Now he's going to have to grab him in mid-stride and then throw him past camera. So by the time he grabs him, the T-Rex is still moving. Will the head be whipping close to us?
And then get just all the way down.
Dennis Murren of Industrial Light and Magic checks the choreography to make sure he and his team can match the human images.
Kevin? Action!
Do you think George Lucas was slightly inspired by you to put some more animals into Star Wars for his re-release? Did he talk to you?
He told me that Jurassic Park gave him the idea of releasing Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Jedi by using computer animation and computer graphic imaging to enhance and get rid of some of the matte lines and create new creatures and new characters that he couldn't do before, to bring back Jabba the Hutt, for instance, fully CGI'd. So he told me that's the reason he reissued the 3 films.
There were some spin-offs from Jurassic Park, video games, for instance. Those good fun to create?
The great thing about doing video games is the audience is more in control of the experience. When you come to see Lost World, I'm controlling the experience because I made the movie. But when you're sitting at your PC or when you're sitting at your little game station and you're playing on your PlayStation or your Sega, or your Nintendo, what you're really doing is you are controlling the fate of your characters. And you turn left, you get eaten. You turn right, you live. It depends. So that's fun in a different kind of way. We have a game out right now called the Director's Chair, which it's a CD-ROM game for the PC. That actually allows a young budding filmmaker to come in and take about 200 shots and a couple of different ways to tell a story and make their own movie on the PC. Literally taking existing footage that was shot with actors and a couple of storylines, one dramatic, one comedy, and you can mix and match. You can just do straight drama, straight comedy, make a rock video out of it, but you can create your own movie and then go back in and create your sound effects and create your music. And then at the end, wait 45 minutes and your film comes back all done. A little curtain opens on your computer screen. You get to watch your movie back.
It is terrific.
It's I call it film school in a box.
It's different from when we were young.
Yeah, I wish I had something like that when I was young.
Up the hill from here, there's the Jurassic Park ride at Universal. To what extent were you involved in designing and creating that?
Well, I approved the concept of it, and I had a couple of ideas for it, but pretty much it was the game designers at MCA that designed Jurassic Park. You know, I was involved with them at a very early stage, and I certainly wanted it to start with herbivores, you know, grazing, where you think you're on a very peaceful journey, and then by the end of it, the raptors are attacking, and the T-Rex is trying to get you, and it's a bit like the movie. They follow the film in terms of the whole bell curve of the film. They followed pretty accurately, but they added a lot of things that are humorous that you wouldn't expect, and I think it's a good ride.
Here there's an absolutely terrifying drop that gets you wet.
I've never been on it.
You're joking.
I won't go on drops. I won't go on anything that goes fast downhill. So they added that, and I said, okay, you guys can add any drop you want. I'm not going on the ride. So I've been on the ride up to the top, and I've gotten off and gone down the emergency exit, and I've not gone down the chute yet.
So Steven Spielberg will never go on the Jurassic Drive drop?
I will never complete the ride.
Hang on. They're pushing us over the cliff.
Hang on to something! Hang on to something!
Interesting to see your name on films, or Amblin's name on projects, and one wonders, as one looks from afar, the extent to which you yourself are involved. Take the television series, ER. Do you have anything to do with that?
No, I don't. I mean, ER, I'm very proud of it, and my company produces it, along with Michael Crichton's company, Constant, and Warner Brothers. But I had a lot to do with the casting. You know, I didn't pick the cast, but I approved the cast that John Wells had selected, and along with the director of the pilot. But I, you know, for the first year, I pretty much read every treatment, gave my comments, and read every little teleplay, and wrote my comments down and sent them to John Wells. But John was the showrunner; he was in charge of the show. But second and third year, I've had virtually nothing to do with the show. The show's a hit; doesn't need me. Didn't need me the first year because John Wells is so bloody good. But it was fun dabbling that first year and just being able to see where the show is going and be able to have a little bit of input. But it's not really my show. I'm just proud that my company does it.
But, for instance, on one of the first projects of your new company, DreamWorks, Peacemaker with George Clooney, it's directed by a relative newcomer, Mimi Leader. How much do you get involved in the production?
Only when I'm invited. Mimi invited me to see an early cut of her picture, which I looked at with her. I don't impose myself on you know, unless, you know, the director either asks me to see something or there's a problem in a production and they have to, that requires our looking into it. But, no, I really believe in giving filmmakers as much autonomy as I certainly, you know, have enjoyed. You have to earn your total autonomy. I'm not going to give first cut to a first-time director, certainly, but, you know, I'm very respectful of how hard it is to make a movie and how personal that film becomes and how the script does change because it goes through a vessel called the director, and that vessel does interpret it any way he or she desires, and so I have a great deal of admiration and respect for directors and for writers, and I kind of like to stand on the sidelines and watch that process, you know, evolve. But I don't get really that involved except on the scripts. I get very involved on the scripts. Once the script is set, everybody's happy with it. I kind of go away, and the director goes and makes the movie.
Schindler's List was a success of a different kind. It had this vast audience, more than 75 million people. What are the consequences to you of making Schindler's List?
Well, it changed my life in a pretty profound way. It pretty much, you know, turned me out as opposed to turned me in. I had been pretty much turned in to myself. And I think in a sense that film created a responsibility that I'd never really felt I had. It gave me something to believe in. it started me to try to figure out how can I preserve the memory of the Holocaust, not just in a movie that could be forgotten someday, but how can I preserve the memory of the Holocaust through eyewitness testimonies of the survivors who were actually there. So I began the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, and thus far, over the last 2 years, we've recorded 26,000 Holocaust survivor testimonies on physical tape that is then databased digitally, so it'll be preserved forever. And our goal is 50,000, and we'll reach our goal within 2 years. So it's changed my life in the sense it has turned me away from my own selfish considerations and into kind of, it's gotten me active with living history, which is a very rewarding thing to be active in. I missed all the causal things in the '60s. I wasn't a Vietnam activist, or I wasn't I wasn't what do they call them, a student radical. I pretty much was just making movies and making little films and bigger films, and the world was sort of going by. I wasn't watching the news, and I think I've become a little more involved in the world because of Schindler's List.
Spielberg used part of his earnings from Schindler's List to initiate the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, a worldwide program to record the testimonies of Holocaust survivors. He explained it to Ben Kingsley, an actor from the film.
So we move through this world of faces yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So what we have here is all the names of all the survivors. There will eventually be, in the first 3 years, 50,000 testimonies rescued from the 300,000 survivors that still exist today. But in 10 years' time, there will not be that many survivors. So it's a race of time to get as many survivors to testify on videotape as possible. So with every name, you'll see a picture and a small little summary of who they are. So I can type in a name, Henry Rossmarin.
People who would teach, Hitler kids, when I was liberated, I was 19 and a half.
And what this essentially is Henry has just given 2 to 5 hours of testimony about what happened to him in the Holocaust. He plays the harmonica, which is why he survived. This saved his life. When the survivors are speaking, almost like a online living documentary, automatically maps and pictures of themselves and actual photographs, documentary movies of the ghettos they were in, the forced labor camps they were in, will automatically be triggered by what they're saying, and at appropriate moments will scroll on. So you're looking at almost a living document you are watching a living document of one's experience in the Holocaust.
Presumably the main value of the Shoah Foundation is to stop a terrible thing like this ever happening again.
Yeah, it's about teaching basically about racial hatred, and trying to understand why people hate, and what can we do to lead people not to hate each other for differences that cannot be controlled, and I think that's the young people have such interesting responses to stories about hatred. And the one that I'll never forget is the black community was shown Schindler's List at the Apollo Theater in Harlem on the night of the Academy Awards, actually. And 2 young boys, 11, 12 years old, had come out of the cinema. And one African-American boy said to this other boy, well, I don't understand it because, it didn't happen to my people. It happened to people I don't know about, but it sure didn't happen to me, so why should I care? And the other African-American boy said to his friend, because pain is pain. And I always thought that was one of the most moving and profound things I've heard.
Your next film is about slavery. I mean, is this going to be a Schindler's List for black people, as it were?
Well, that's not my intention setting out. My intention is to tell a really significant piece of history that I think everybody needs to know about, African-Americans and white Americans and Asian Americans and Latino Americans. I mean, everybody should know about what happened to the slaves. And it's not a sprawling epic the way, in a sense, Schindler's List took on the entire Holocaust, as seen through the eyes of several significant characters. The Amistad is a much smaller story about the court case where the 44 Africans were put on trial for their lives because they had taken over a slave ship, a Spanish slave ship called the Amistad, which means friendship, and they had killed several of the crew members, and the rest jumped overboard. and the Africans told the two surviving Spaniards to turn back toward Africa and head east, and instead they headed north and wound up being captured off the coast of Long Island and taken to prison, where a trial began, several trials for their lives. It was over a 2.5-year period, and they were in jail for all that time, where their defense attorney was the 74-year-old ex-president John Quincy Adams, and the prosecuting attorney behind the scenes was the sitting president, Martin Van Buren. This is often called the trial of the presidents, and it happened between 1839 and 1841, so it was an interesting period of American history and black cultural history, and I just think it's a movie that was compelling. It sure caught my interest, and I like to tell the story.
Some of your contemporaries, good film directors, seem to me to make the same film again and again, but I perceive a growth in your work.
Yeah, with a few detours to make a lost world once in a while. Yeah, I'd like to think that. I'd like to think that, you know, I began my personal journey when I directed Color Purple in 1984 or 83, whatever. I forgot when I actually made that movie, but you know, in the mid '80s I made that picture, and that really allowed me to make Schindler's List. You know, a decade later. Without Color Purple, I wouldn't have made Schindler's List, because I began to grow up through film as well as, you know, having a final time, you know, to tick with other people. And to find a personal movie was much more rewarding for me, that I was able to put more of myself in a film with The Color Purple than I am able to put myself in the Indiana Jones movies.
Before he began preparation for The Lost World, Spielberg broke with his past by launching a new studio, DreamWorks.
I think I realized one day that I had always been working for other people. That with all of my independence and my rights to make my own movies and cut them the way I'd like them to cut and spend as much money as I think they deserve to be spent on them, and I pretty much, every film was like being done by my own small studio, and yet they were controlled and owned by the copyright holders and the studio that put up the financing. And I always said to myself, you know, it's interesting, in my entire life, you know, we have an automobile, we have a house, I have a wonderful family, you know, they own the clothes on their back, and yet the job I go to, you know, I'm always working for somebody else, and I don't own the real estate. I'm not part of the land that I've built my career on. And I just thought that it was about time that I started my own company where I could at least have the pride of ownership, not just the pride of leasing or renting, but the pride of really being able to invest in the movies I make, and then let those movies, you know, help the company to grow, and where everything invests in itself.
Do you think, if you were to look within yourself, that one of the reasons for building a studio is you want to leave a sort of a monument behind?
I don't think about building like monuments and things for things to last. I think film lasts longer than anything else. I think film is the most lasting antiquity to leave behind, and so I don't think building a building will last, because a tractor someday can just demolish it. They set those charges, and you've seen those buildings being blown up. They kind of just like come down from the top, and there's a big dust cloud, and so that's gone like that. And no, I think film will always be the most lasting memory of anyone's life.
So what is DreamWorks' mission statement?
Well, DreamWorks' mission statement was basically to not run with the herd, but you know, do pictures and TV shows and games and books that appeal to us personally, and not have to follow trends or be compelled because of the fiduciary obligation to a public company, which we are not, to have to make the kind of movies we don't want to make. Every major studio makes a number of films every year that they do not really want to make, but they have to fill the bill. They have to, you know, they have to compete with the Joneses next door, and they have to make their 35 pictures a year. And we never wanted to be in that business. I certainly didn't want to have to make a movie I didn't want to make. If I make a bad movie that people hate, they'll of course say, well, you didn't have to make that bad movie that we hated, but it's probably because I wanted to make that movie, and maybe I like it, and it's not so bad in my eyes, and maybe it just failed along the road, and we never intended it to be bad. But you know, I like to make fewer movies so I could guarantee that I'm more satisfied, as opposed to making so many movies I can't possibly watch all those eggs in one basket.
It seems to me that at the age of 50 you're starting to pile up the work again. How do you allocate your time? It seems after those few years off You've got Private Ryan, we hear, in the works, where you may come back to Europe, will you?
Yeah, for the whole film.
So you're piling up work again, are you?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm piling up children as well. Work and children, you know.
How many children?
I have 7 kids, which is a lot more challenging than making a $70 million movie, I can tell you. The home life and my family is my number one priority. And it always has been ever since I had family. It's been my number one priority. And how do I balance it? I don't know. But I haven't heard that many complaints from my kids. Until they start complaining, where's Daddy? Then I know things are going along okay.
What?
This is magnificent.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, that's how it always starts. But then later there's running and screaming.
What is it?
Mommy's very angry.